I want to close out looking at the two other findings, and I won't read them, but they're closely related. One is that the commission said that in order to, bring the budget under control, we needed to take into account the long-term demographic outlook for the country, and also we need to look at the Social Security trustees, report on, bringing the revenues and expenditures into line for Social Security, which obviously has a lot to do with the demographics. So what are some of the demographic factors that are at play in the economy here?
Well, I mean, it's actually interesting. We're now looking forward and saying the retirement of the baby boom is driving this uh, sort of the budget problem of growing entitlement spending and rising debt and deficits. I mean, we mentioned earlier in the show about how there was a brief period in the late 90s and up to 2001 where the government actually ran a surplus briefly. And it's interesting, actually, demographics played a role there because if you look at the baby boom population, those born between 1946 and 1964, in the late 90s, early 2000s, they were in sort of their peak years of earnings. In other words, if you look at this, what's called the age earnings profile, people that start their career, they earn, a more modest wage. As they get into their 50s, early 60s, they sort of reach their maximum earnings. And so during the late 90s, you had the bulk of the baby boomers in their peak earning years. And so they were contributing to productivity growth and higher wages, which produced higher revenue. And so, a portion of the improved budget outlook that occurred and ability to run those surpluses was due to the baby boomers working. But now, unfortunately, we've turned the corner, and the oldest, I'm sorry, not the oldest, but the youngest of the baby boomers will have turned 60 this year, 1946, 1964. They're all now 60 years old, and they're looking just a few years away from early retirement for Social Security, Medicare eligibility. And so they will then leave the workforce. We'll lose those workers, we'll lose the revenue, and they'll now be on the other side of the ledger. They'll be collecting Social Security benefits and receiving Medicare payments. And so that demographic shift, which helped us in the late 90s, early 2000s, is now working against us. And you add on top of that, unfortunately, we've seen a dramatic decline in the fertility rate. So the number of future workers are now projected to be much less than we thought. I mean, back in the early 1990s and all the way up until, right before the financial crisis in 2007, fertility rates were close to two, as the average woman was expected to have two children roughly over their lifetime. And that's roughly enough to replace the population and maintain a stable population. Since 2007, the fertility rates have declined almost continuously. They've gone down. I think the most recent year, last year, the fertility rate, I think, was 1.6 and change, 1.62, 1.63. So, at that level, you're not going to replace the population. And by mid-century, you're going to see the prospect of a population decline unless the falling fertility is offset by higher immigration.